2008, the Supreme Court approved the rule of procedure for small claims, wherein a person is allowed to file a case against someone who owes them money, provided that the amount owed to them does not exceed 100,000 pesos. The rationale behind creating the small claims courts was so that the poor can benefit from this, since it will minimize court expenses and shorten trial procedures. The process allows both parties to handle their own cases from beginning to end, and since it doesn't require the services of a lawyer, the disputing parties are allowed to present themselves. It is the hope of the Supreme Court that access to justice for the disadvantaged will be increased with the small claims courts. Speaking of courts, the Supreme Court designated 24 first-level courts composed of the Metropolitan Trial Courts, Municipal Trial Courts, and Municipal Circuit Trial Courts, making it easier for people to file their cases. With that said, what is the process of filing for a case at the small claims courts? What are the requirements? And how long do these cases usually take?
Good evening. You are watching Legal Helpdesk. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight, we'll discuss your legal rights on small claims, what you need to know about small claims, and what you need to do to file for one.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney Christian Kit Villasis of the Millar Villasis Pangilinan Law Offices. Good evening, and thank you for being with us, Attorney Kit.
Yes, good evening, Karen. Good evening, Rod. Thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. And you know, although the title of our show is Small Claims, it's not a small matter. Because a lot of people are really affected by this.
Exactly.
And I think the good thing about this new development sa law, a lot of people are still not aware that there's such a thing as a small claims court.
Yes.
And
yes.
It would make proceedings faster, no?
Exactly.
Yeah, so perhaps, Attorney Kit, you can give us an overview. What is this small claims about?
Why did it pass?
Why should people even know about it?
Well, of course, my friends, no, if you talk about the rules of small claims, ordinarily, if you talk about a collection of sum of money, we have to go to court, file a complaint, of course, and secure the services of a lawyer. But of course, let us say the amount involved is only 80,000 pesos. Okay? And we secure the services of a lawyer. Pardon me, my friends, my panera. Of course, we have to charge the acceptance fee. We have to charge our appearances, of course, the pleading fees. And more often than not, the clients, no, the litigants are discouraged in continuing with the filing of the case, precisely because at the end of the day, they will spend more than the amount being
collected. Sometimes you hear that dun pa lang sa hassle, and then on top of that, all the legal fees, mas mapapamahal pa.
Exactly.
When in fact, if you're only claiming something like 50,000, 80,000, then abonado ka pa.
Abonado ka pa.
So under the small claims law, ano yung parameters that allow people to be able to collect without having to spend for lawyers and
to begin with, pardon me, no, my apologies to our fellow lawyers. I don't know if I am the best person to talk about small claims because I am also a lawyer. But friends, admittedly, if we talk about small claims, first and foremost, nakakatipid tayo precisely because as mentioned, lawyers are not allowed to appear here. So there are no acceptance fees, as mentioned.
Lawyers are not allowed to appear there.
Lawyers are not allowed, absolutely.
Okay. So for our lawyer viewers.
I'm sorry.
This is really...
But of course, except if they are a party. If the lawyers, the plaintiff, the defendant, then necessarily, of course, they could appear.
Which means if they are themselves the litigants.
Exactly, exactly. And of course, if you talk about small claims, likewise, we can do away with the formal pleadings required in ordinary litigation process. Why? Precisely because there are ready forms made available in courts for free, my friends.
So filling up of the forms lang.
Filling up lang. We will secure copies of the forms from the courts. Okay na yan.
So you get the form from the court. So.
Yes, from the court.
And I've seen these forms. They're really simple. They're simple to fill up. And yung mga details are bare minimum, right? Yung kung ano yung kiniklaim mo, how much is the amount that you're claiming, and who you are, basically.
So, essentially, when you said that lawyers are not allowed, if you brought your lawyer there, is that a technicality that prevents you from collecting? Is that a technicality that the court will say, you have a lawyer, technically you are barred from making a claim?
Well, there is an express prohibition in the rules of small claims. So, the judge necessarily will not allow the lawyer
to participate.
To enter his appearance in court.
Yeah, so they cannot participate in the trial.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's say if I'm a lawyer and I just happen to be helping a friend or my nephew or my son or my mother. Is that possible? I'm not appearing as a lawyer, but I'm just accompanying someone.
Well, okay, I have to clarify that. Of course, my friends, no, if you talk about representing, appearing in court, that is not allowed. Okay? But if you will just accompany, okay, a person there, that is allowed technically. But I must stress, my friends, that if the party here is an individual, and you will be a representative, that representative under the rules of small claims should not be a lawyer. In fact, under the amendments, he should be at least next of kin, an heir of the individual party.
I see.
The same is true, even with the corporations. In the corporation, juridical entities can be represented by any person or with the board resolution, but that person, again, should not be a lawyer. Ang sakit, ano?
Yeah, masakit sa mga abogado, nabawasan ng trabaho. But good news for all of those who have small claims. Meaning, ano ba yung small claims? Ano yung threshold amount?
Ano yung threshold? Threshold amount, 100,000 pesos. If the claim does not exceed 100,000 pesos, we can file a complaint for sum of money before the MTC. But I have to clarify this, Panyera. No? Under the rules, nakalagay dyan, the amount does not exceed 100,000 pesos. But let me tell everyone this. Let us say my claim is 150,000 pesos. Okay, exaggerate natin.
So beyond the threshold?
Beyond the threshold.
Okay.
500,000.
Okay.
Yan, para mas malaki pa. Can we file it before the MTC and our case be governed by the rules of small claims? The answer now, based on the amendments, is yes. Why? Because under the amendments, we will simply waive the excess of 100,000 pesos. So sabi natin, ayoko nang mag-avail ng services ng abogado. Okay? I will simply file the complaint before the MTC. Small claims tayo. I will be appearing in court. In which case, I will simply waive the excess of 100,000 pesos.
Yeah.
Pwede yun.
So, Attorney Kit, this is actually ideal for those people who are already thinking about settlements, that they're willing to forgo. For instance, the claim is 200,000 and to save themselves from the hassle, they're thinking, okay na sa akin kahit makolekta ko yung 100,000 pesos lang. So, what they'll do is just file small claims in the small claims court, and then they'll be able to get the 100,000. And basically, you already have to give up the other 100,000 pesos.
But Attorney Kit, for example, it's a 150 claim, no?
Okay.
But gusto ko manigurado.
Okay.
I'm gonna file, for the first 100 of that 150, I'm gonna file it sa small claims court. But gusto ko manigurado, the 150, i-claim ko pa rin sa regional trial court or sa, the appropriate court. Pwede ba yun? Or hindi pwede?
Hindi pwede. That is forum shopping.
Forum shopping.
The same thing, forum shopping, no?
Splitting a cause of action.
Twisting the case a bit. What if I'm claiming the first 100,000 and the balance I claim it in another court?
Similarly,
Forum shopping
that is splitting a cause of action.
Hindi pwede yun.
We can only file one suit on the basis of one cause of action.
And the danger with that, for our viewers, would be pwedeng ma-dismiss yung parehong kaso. So, you just really have to decide.
So, you have to waive na. You have to waive the talaga the excess.
We have to waive the excess.
So, you kind of have to weigh it rin, di ba? You have to weigh it. Kasi kung 300,000, and sabi mo, 100,000 lang collect ko, but we waive ko 200,000.
Yeah. But I guess you have to do the math. How much would the lawyers cost? How much are the filing fees? Yung hassle pa of, again, having to go through a longer procedure. Because in small claims, what's the average time that it takes for a case to be heard and to be decided?
Well, this is very ideal because upon filing the complaint and upon the service of the summons, of course, in the notice of hearing, there will be a settlement proceedings. So 1 day lang yan. On the same day, the judge will be encouraging the parties to explore the possibility of settlement.
How many days yun? After you file, how many days before?
Well, procedurally, upon the filing of what we call a statement of claim, yan ang tawag dyan sa complaint, no? A statement of claim, the court is given a period of 24 hours to issue summons notice of hearing. And the summons should be served within 5 days from the issuance of the court. Okay. Now, pag na-serve na yung summons and the notice of hearing, there will be a hearing now. During the hearing, as mentioned, there will be settlement proceedings. The judge will encourage the parties to explore the possibility of settlement. Now, pag na-settle tayo, okay, compromise agreement, the court will approve it, judgment based on compromise. But if there is no settlement, what will happen? There will be an informal hearing. Remember ho, mga kaibigan, you will not be represented by your lawyers here. So the litigants themselves will appear in court during that hearing. And after the hearing, pag walang settlement, what will happen now? The court will conduct a hearing. Informal ito. Wala tayong objection. Wala tayong exhibit A, Your Honor.
Wala mga objections, mga legal objections.
Yes, mabilis ito. Kasi walang abogado. Now, on the same day of the hearing, after the hearing, the court, as a rule, should issue a decision already. So we can have a decision the same day of the hearing.
One hearing lang?
One hearing lang.
Okay.
And that is expressly stated in the rules.
Okay.
Kahit
So
na medyo
talaga-
complex. Kahit na medyo complex yung
So
claim.
really,
Yes,
as
yes,
you can
yes.
see from here, one of the benefits of filing with the small claims court is it would
Yeah.
be much, much faster than your
Right.
ordinary litigation
Yes.
cases.
No, okay. That's
So
great.
we'll talk about more
Yeah.
more about small claims, what
Yeah.
types of cases when you
Yes.
say
Covered, yeah.
100,000 and below. But for now, we'll have to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. You're still watching Legal Help Desk with our guest, Attorney Christian Villasis. Attorney Kit, kanina we were talking about the 100,000 pesos threshold amount, meaning kailangan hindi lalagpas ng 100,000 pesos in order to file with the small claims court.
Yes.
But perhaps you can explain more. Anong types of cases ito? Because what if nanakawan ka and less than 100,000 pesos yung nanakaw sa'yo, can you automatically go to the small claims
that is a
court?
very good question. No? But before I answer that, regarding the threshold amount, I have to add something. No? Regarding the threshold amount of 100,000 pesos, I made it clear that we can waive the excess 100,000 pesos. But aside from that, let us say, the claim is only 95,000 pesos. But I want to ask for damages. I want to ask for interest. Okay? 50,000 damages, 50,000 interest. Magkano lahat na? 195,000 pesos.
Pero yung principal is
But the
only
principal
95.
is only 95.
Pasok
Of
sa
course, interesado mga kaibigan natin. Can we still file it in court and the case be governed by the rules of small claims? The answer, my friends, is yes.
Yes.
Why? Because under the rules of small claims, we will simply consider the principal amount of the obligation. We have to exclude the amount of damages being claimed. We have to exclude the interest. We have to exclude litigation expenses and even cost of the suit. So we only talk about the amount of 95,000
What if you abuse it? Parang tataasan mo na lang yung damages, taasan mo yung interest.
Okay lang yan.
You
It will not
can abuse
affect
it.
after all.
It will not affect the jurisdiction.
Yeah, because we
Meaning
only
the
consider
court
the
can still
principal.
take jurisdiction and it's up to the discretion of the judge na lang to decide
Yes, exactly.
how much damages or interest.
According to the sound judgment of the court.
Okay, what if yun nga merong criminal aspect naman, estafa for instance. So kunwari nag-bounce yung check nung pinautang ko and estafa yung or BP22 yung final
Yan.
natin or yung pwedeng maging kaso
Yeah,
sana.
special law kasi yan,
Yes.
22.
But then the amount is just 100,000.
Yeah.
Can I file in the small claims
That is
court?
also a very good question. Maraming interesado dyan. Check Okay?
Yes.
Regarding the check, I have to emphasize this. May amendments tayo sa rules of small claims. If let us say we talk about a check amounting to 95,000 pesos, can we file a case under the rules of small claims? Sagot natin dyan, yes. Pwede na. But I must emphasize, my friends, that there is now a provision, an express provision found in the amendments to the rules of small claims, which means that mamimili lang tayo. We can either file a BP22 case or we will file a case under the rules of small claims. Mamimili tayo in the sense that if we have already filed a BP22 case, we can no longer file a case under the rules of small claims.
Pwede ma-dismiss
Can you have
yung,
that but if you're already pag pending na yung BP22 case mo, pwede mo ba ipa-dismiss sa judge? Hindi na. So you have to just
Why?
really
I have to
pursue it.
emphasize this. Kasi if you talk about criminal actions, yung civil liability ex delicto arising from the crime, no? Pwedeng i-file yan na sa MTC under the rules of small claims. Apparently, if we talk about check expressly under the rules of criminal procedure, we cannot file separately the civil liability ex delicto arising from the crime. Kailangan kasama siya automatically sa BP22. So in which case, hindi pwedeng separately i-file natin ang BP22 siya kayong small claims. But I have to emphasize this. Sa rules of procedure of small claim cases, nakalagay dyan, yung amendments by filing this action under the rules of small claims, I am deemed to have waived I will forgo already my right to institute an action under BP22. So nakalagay yan. Even sa certification against forum shopping, nakalagay dyan. That is why I told you earlier that mamimili lang tayo. Either small claims or BP22.
In other words, Attorney Kit, kunwari merong check that I issued which bounced, I have a cause of action under BP22 or the bouncing checks law.
Yes.
But if I want the whole case to go much faster and to get my money back faster through the small claims court, what I have to do is file it there, but then I also have to give up my ability to put that person in prison.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
So
that is
because
very correct.
if I want to have this person go to prison and under the BP 22 law, then I have to file it with the regional trial court.
Yes.
And,
small claims.
And that will take years, no?
And of course, there will be a lawyer there. That will be governed by the rules of summary procedure.
But you can waive that penal aspect, just proceed with the civil aspect of that and claim in a small claims.
What about
with
respect to mga cases that are subject to the Katarungang Pambarangay law? Meaning if you both live in the same city or municipality, how can you just go straight to the small claims court?
No. Okay, that is a very good question again. No? Panyara, regarding RA 2116, yung local government code, the Katarungang Pambarangay law, indeed, if the parties are residents of the same city or municipality, it is mandatory for them to go to the barangay and to have mediation and conciliation efforts.
Even if the amount is less than 100,000?
Yes. As a matter of fact, if we revisit, if we check the statement of claim, yung complaint kung tawagin natin, under rules of small claims, may nakalagay doon na checklist. Whether or not the parties are governed by the rule ng Katarungang Pambarangay law. If yes, ilalagay mo rin whether or not there was a conciliation effort conducted and whether or not there was a compromise agreement reached by the parties.
Is that a jurisdictional thing? Meaning, without that, then the small claims
the
court
requirement of barangay conciliation is not jurisdictional in nature, but it is mandatory in character. But nonetheless, that may result to the dismissal of the case. Failure to comply to a condition present.
All right. We have a couple of questions from our viewers. Our first question is from Roderick. Are debts that occurred before October 2008 still applicable under the rule of procedure for small claims? Also, what is the legal recourse for those who are being harassed by collecting agents? So, two questions. First one, if it's
before October
the debt is before
2008.
October 2008.
So, wala pang rules of small
October
claims.
1, 2008, ang rules of procedure small claim cases, although it became effective in March of 2010. But nonetheless, the question here is, can we apply the rules of small claims? What is important, my friends, is at the time of the filing of the complaint. Because remedial laws, procedural rules are prospective in character. In other words, the law, the rules enforced at the time of the file of the action will be the one to apply at the time you file the complaint. Even if we talk about retroactive effect of the rules of procedure, nakalagay din naman dyan, sabi ng Korte Suprema, we could give retroactive effect to all cases pending and determined at the time of the passage of the rule.
Unless nag-prescribe na, I guess.
Yes, unless of course nag-prescribe na. But to answer the question, kung 2008 nag-incur yung obligation, yes, pwede. Pwede pa.
May pag-asa pa.
Yes.
Now, itong question niya about collecting agents.
Collecting agents, talagang problema to, no? Pardon me. But of course, my friends, to begin with, I must emphasize this. Wala tayong batas dyan eh. I understand that there was a bill, if I remember it right, it was Senator Miriam Santiago, who filed that bill. Pero still, that is still a bill. But nonetheless, if we check the Bangko Sentral of the Pinang Pilipinas circulars there, meron dyan yung 454.
Yes, there are regulations that prohibit especially banks, financial institutions, from undertaking harassment as part of their collecting practices. But in this case, can it be a counterclaim? Ibig sabihin, if the person who is trying to collect the debt from him files in the small claims court because the debt is only 100,000 pesos, and then this person who is yung sinisingil, the person being asked to pay the money,
the defendant,
wants to raise the issue that I was being harassed when he was trying to collect it from me. Can he raise that in the small claims court?
Yeah. Under the rules of small claims, if you were the defendant, pwedeng humingi ng counterclaim.
So it's the same. In
whether
small claims court, you can do the same thing.
Permissive or compulsory. That is a compulsory counterclaim.
Okay. Sige. Our next question is from Bettina. Can I file a case for small claims without going to the barangay? Is it necessary that the two parties need to meet first and try to reach a settlement before filing for a small claims case in court?
We were talking about that.
I was talking about that. Again, that is mandatory. If you reside in the same city municipality, you have to go to the barangay. If there is no settlement, you have to secure a certificate to file action before filing the complaint.
If not, it can be dismissed.
Interestingly, I have to emphasize one thing, if I may.
Sure.
But if there was a compromise agreement reached before the barangay, okay, and the amount involved, likewise, does not exceed 100,000 pesos. can this compromise agreement, amicable settlement, no, be filed likewise? We talk about execution. Because under the katarungan pang barangay law, if we're going to execute a compromise agreement within 6 months, sa barangay lang tayo, sa Lupon. But after the 6-month period, we have to go to the MTC under 407 of the local government.
It's an interesting question.
The question now is, interestingly, kung yung compromise agreement, the amount involved there does not exceed 100,000 pesos, can I file it the MTC and the same be governed by the rules of small claims? Answer, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, yes.
Yes.
Depende yan.
So for implementation purposes of a, I guess, a settlement
agreement
in a barangay situation, so you can then raise that to them.
Beyond the 6-month period.
Beyond the 6-month period.
If we're going to execute it.
Right.
But this is really good news for all our viewers out there because, again, if your claim does not exceed 100,000 pesos, you really can skip all of the tedious processes or long periods that you have to undergo in a regular court.
Exactly.
Okay, we have a lot more to discuss, and there are still several questions from our viewers there. So please stay tuned. Legal Help Desk will return after the short break. You're still tuned in to Legal Help Desk with our guest, Attorney Christian Villasis.
Okay, so we're still on the topic of small claims. Now, we mentioned earlier, for those who just tuned in, the claim has to be just 100,000 and below, for it to fall under small claims. What if someone issued me several post-dated checks with regards to a particular transaction, and each check is, let's say, 50,000, 50,000, 50,000, but it all amounts to 300,000? Can I file individual small claims for each of those bouncing checks and still fall within the small claims court jurisdiction?
Well, if the amount does exceed 100,000 pesos, it can be filed.
So you can do it basically in installments then?
Well,
the case.
It depends. One check, one cause of action.
Okay, so
even if hindi nagbayad, di ba? You're going to file a complaint now. But if there is one transaction and you issued several checks, all the checks bounce now. You have to file one complaint only.
One complaint only.
So
one transaction.
For instance, if you sold a car to someone else and the total amount is 300,000 pesos and the checks were like what Rod gave as an example, take 50,000 pesos, then you have to file for the whole 300,000 pesos.
In court.
In a regular court.
You can't
Unless
split
I'm
it.
willing to give up the 200,000 pesos and just go to the small claims.
But I have to clarify this. Can we join on the other hand? Let us say 20,000 check, 20,000 check, 20,000 check. Pwede ba magkaroon ng joiner? The answer is yes. As long as, again, the amount does not exceed 100,000 pesos.
So for instance, Rod owes me a total of 80,000 pesos. But,
4 checks.
But the loans were for different transactions. Na merong 30,000, may 20,000, and then another 30,000.
Yeah.
So I can combine all of those and file just one case in the small claims court.
I have to explain that. Medyo technical ng konti. But we have to talk about joinder of causes of action. In the simplest terms, depende kung ilang parties ang involved. If there's only one-on-one, one plaintiff, one defendant, regardless whether or not there is the same transaction or different transactions, we can join in one complaint all our causes of action. Gaya na sinabi mo, iba-ibang transaction, but the total amount is only 80,000 pesos. One plaintiff, one defendant, allowed by the rules of civil procedure to apply yung joinder of causes of action as long as the claim does not exceed 100,000 pesos.
But if there are
multiple,
yes, meaning Rod and another friend of ours also borrowed money from me. So gusto ko sanang pagsamahin because it does not exceed 100. Is that okay?
We have to check that, no? Kasi under the rules of civil procedure, which apply suppletorily in the rules of small claims, may tinatawag tayong permissive joinder of parties. Which means that if there are multiple parties involved, literally one plaintiff, 2 or more defendants, or break rin natin, 2 or more defendants versus one plaintiff, 2 or more plaintiffs, or 2 or more defendants. Anyway, pag in a sitwasyon natin, we have to check 2 things. First, my friends, is there a common question of law or fact? And secondly, did it arise from the same transaction or series of transactions? If the answer now here is no, hindi pwede magkaroon ng joinder of causes of action. Invalid yung joinder of parties dyan. In your problem, in our problem now, dalawang parties ang involved, different transactions. One plaintiff lang. Pwede pa pagsamahin? The answer is no.
But if they borrowed from me for the same transaction, meaning they wanted to put up a business and Rod borrowed 50,000 from me and his partner borrowed 30,000, then I can file that action in a small claim.
The same transaction.
Okay. But let's say if it's one part, let's say me and Karen again. I borrowed from Karen, let's say for business 20,000. Then I borrowed from her because I bought a car 30,000.
Yes.
So different causes of actions, different transactions. I mean same. I borrowed from her. Let's say umabot na ng 150 yon. I can't have, let's say, 5 small claim cases.
No, only one.
Only one.
Because one plaintiff.
Even if each of the loans were for different purposes.
Pwede lang yan. Walang problema dyan. As long as there's one plaintiff, one defendant. That is the rule on joinder of parties under the rules.
But at least the good thing is it's very efficient. So if you're just really complaining against one person, then you can really consolidate all of them and then settle everything in one case.
I was going to ask, in the procedure, walang allowed na motions. Are there any motions you can have? Kunyari, if you're the defendant and may motion ka for demurrer of evidence or whatever, walang ganon.
Well, as mentioned, there are no formal pleadings here. There are already forms available in the courts. No? Lawyers are not allowed, therefore pleadings are likewise not allowed.
And how important is it that you filed a demand letter? Kasi pwede bang diretso na? Or you didn't even file a demand on
of course, the basic principle there under the new civil code is that there should be a demand.
There should be a demand.
There should be a
But interestingly, if we check the rules of small claims, yung demand dito not necessarily in writing.
Okay.
Kasi may checklist eh. Nakalagay doon, how did you demand the payment of the obligation? May checklist, pwedeng in writing, meron pang nakalagay, telephone.
Text or text.
Or others. So that means, it goes without saying, na pwede.
It doesn't
not
have to be
in writing.
But just make sure that you ask for...
But it's better, of course. It's better.
You demand first.
Better kasi the defendant can say, I never got the demand.
Yes.
All right, we still have some questions from our viewers. Donald is asking, my wife was hit by a car and had several physical injuries. We made an agreement with the one who hit her that he will shoulder the expenses for her treatment. However, he only paid a portion of the medical bills and has yet to pay for the follow-up visits to the doctors and the remaining corrective medical procedures. Can I file for a case of small claims?
Yes.
You can.
Yeah. Likewise, common problem. We can file a case under the rules of small claims. Again, if the claim does not exceed 100,000 pesos, or we are going to waive again the excess of 100,000 pesos. Claim for damages, my friends, solely for a sum of money on the basis of quasi-delict, negligence na yan, pwede yan.
Even for, let's say, let's say in this case, walang written agreement. Parang verbally, sagutin mo yan, sagutin mo yan. Pwede ba yan? You can make a claim based on a verbal agreement like that? Na
Well, as a lawyer, there are several ways to establish an obligation. But to make it simple, as a rule, of course, we need a contract, a promissory note. But in the event na wala talaga, can we present witnesses? Nakalagay dyan sa enumeration under rules of small claims, is there a promissory note? May mga questions eh. Kung wala, affidavit of witnesses, etc.
So kailangan niya lang kumuha ng affidavit for someone, for instance.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so...
Or you demand.
And in the proceeding, can you bring those witnesses?
Yeah.
All right.
You can do.
Okay.
And the affidavits, of course.
We have another question from Angelica. A friend of mine borrowed money from me but has never paid me back. I loaned him 40,000 pesos as a startup for his rice business. Our agreement was that a year after he would pay me back, but he only gave me 16,000 pesos. I now have cancer and would like to file a case against him. How should I proceed with this? So, ang natitira na lang, I think, is 23,000 pesos.
Yeah.
And I'm worried that even if I file a case against him, he would still not pay me back. The money would help me with my medical bills and medicines.
Ayan.
Yeah, so
This is a
the amount
case.
involved.
Is this a classic case?
Yeah, falls within the jurisdiction again of the MTC. It can be filed under the rules of small
So
claims.
ideally, she should have a promissory note or at least a loan agreement.
Loan agreement, promissory note.
Okay, and
Ideally,
Attorney Kit, in this case, she sounds sick. So what if she cannot represent herself on the day of the trial? Can she send a representative?
Yeah. Actually, we can execute a special power of attorney. And friends, even the SPA, there is an available form in the court. we will simply get a copy, sign the same. If we do not have money to pay for the notarization, even the clerk of court will notarize it.
Okay. Very good news again for viewers.
So, pwede yan.
advice.
SPA for an individual who is not a lawyer.
Oo. And again, yung tinatawag ni Attorney Kit na SPA, that's a special power of attorney in case you need to send a representative. So for instance, yung nagtatanong sa atin, if you're very sick and you cannot appear in court yourself, then ask for that special power of attorney form that you can fill up.
Okay. So our next question naman is from Benny. I filed for a small claims case in 2011, but until now, it hasn't been executed yet. I don't know why the judge hasn't given a decision yet, despite all of the evidences and hearings, plus the fact that the other party never showed up in all of them. It's been 3 years already. What else can I do to have the case move forward?
Oh, very unusual for small claims, diba? 3 years.
3 years.
It's like,
But it can be inferred. It can begin from the problem that there was already a decision. The problem only here is execution. Well, under the small claims, if there is a judgment rendered by the court on the same day of the hearing, it can already be executed. But
how do you do that? How do you do the execution, the implementation? That's normally the hardest part.
Yeah,
Meron kang judgment, pero...
Yan, importante sa lahat yan. No? So we have a judgment as a rule. The judge will render a decision and on the same day, you are required to pay now, Mr. Defendant. But let us say, wala ka pang bayad. Practical. Ano nga yung gagawin natin? Okay? Friends, we could execute a compromise agreement there. Yan. Okay, then we will file a motion for the approval of the compromise agreement. Okay? Or there is a decision, nakalagay doon, I will pay it in 3 months. Okay? There is no need for a hearing anymore. There could be an issuance of a writ of execution already. You will simply file a motion for issuance of writ of execution. The same thing, nasa korte din yan. We will get a copy, we will sign a motion for the issuance of writ of execution, execute natin yan. But dito sa problem to 3 years eh. So what are we going to do here? I think people are interested on execution. No? Let us say, sige, may judgment na against the defendant, pero walang pera talaga. What are we going to do? Perhaps we have to apply superiorly the rules of civil procedure no? in execution, Rule 39. Ibig sabihin, kung wala kang pera, kung wala kang cheque, sige, tingnan natin, meron ka bang personal properties. You exercise the option. Okay?
And the court might attach on those properties
Yes,
para
levy
doon na lang yun yung kukunin,
The levy.
yung payment.
Pwede. Pero pag walang personal properties, so sabi ni Sheriff, you can exercise the option na you choose your real properties. Pero kung wala pa rin real properties, what are we going to do? Or ayaw mag-exercise ng option ni judgment debtor, yung dependent. Kung anong property pipiliin niya to pay the plaintiff. Ano kaya mangyayari? The sheriff will be the one to exercise the option. Kung wala pa rin yung mga tinatawag natin na garnishment, the sheriff will go to the banks, he will serve notices of garnishment, and the bank has to reply whether or not the defendant here has money in their possession which can be used in settling the obligation. Marami yan. No? There is a procedure there found in the rules of court. But the important thing is, as long as you have a judgment, and as long as you have a writ of execution, you can execute it. Yun naman yan eh.
Thank you, Attorney Kit. That's a very helpful advice.
Yeah.
And I think
Certainly
very
agree.
good news to all our viewers out there, especially those who are still not aware up to this day na meron na tayong tinatawag na small claims court, which makes procedures faster and also it's less complicated.
Exactly. Less complicated.
Kasi pagdating sa lawyering, we always talk about the big claims, yung mga stuff of the big cases. But for most people, yung mga, lalo yung mga televiewers natin, normally they're faced with these mga small claims, whether they're the defendant or plaintiff. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
You're
Attorney.
fantastic. It's my pleasure.
Fantastic
Attorney
advice.
Christian
Thank you,
Villasis,
thank you.
again for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Legal
You're
Help
welcome.
Desk will return, so stay tuned. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk. And today we had a very enlightening episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one.
Yes. And in spite of the fact that the rules on small claims procedure has been around for quite a while, a lot of people still don't know about it. Yeah, so right now, basically, if you have a claim, a monetary claim that does not exceed 100,000 pesos, you can skip all the normal procedures sa regular courts, which takes longer, which is more expensive because you have to hire lawyers, and which is more complicated. Now you can go to what you call a small claims court, and you actually are prohibited from bringing a lawyer. There are simple forms there that you can fill up yourselves, and basically it will end faster, meaning your case will be heard faster and it will be resolved faster as well.
So again, the magic number, no, for our televiewers out there is 100,000. No? So if it's 100,000 and below, you can go to the small claims court. Now, however, if you are claiming from someone who lives in the same barangay as yourself, then you have to file a procedure in the barangay.
You have to undergo yung katarungang pambarangay proceedings.
No? And you have to make I guess you go through the arbitration proceedings there in the barangay hall, no? With the
and they have to get what you call the certificate to file action. But that's only if you stay in the same barangay or same city or municipality. But other than that, even if it's a bouncing checks law case, a estafa case, as long as you're willing to forgo the criminal aspect, meaning okay na sa inyo na hindi ipakulong yung sinisingil ninyo, then you can go to the small claims court if your claim does not exceed 100,000 pesos.
Yeah, yun magic number. But again, exception to that magic number is that, for example, your claim is 95,000 pesos. Yun yung main claim mo. But you have other claims like interest, attorney's fees, no, damages, and lumagpas na ng 100,000 yung claim. It can still fall under the small claims court because ang pinag-uusapan lang yung main claim, no?
Yung principal amount.
Claim, yeah, principal amount. So,
but if the amount also exceeds 100,000 pesos, you can still go to the small claims court if you're willing to forgo the excess amount. So, I guess this is when you balance practicality. Meaning, kunwari, yung sinisingil ninyo is 150,000 pesos. But when you think about it, if you go through the regular courts, baka yung 50,000 pesos na susobra would be not enough to cover for the filing fees, the lawyer's fees, and the hassle of having to go to courts longer, then perhaps you can decide to just forgo the 50,000 pesos and then file your claim with the small claims court. Yeah. Because again, as we've heard kanina, the procedure really takes faster, meaning the normal cases that usually take a year or more than a year, 2 years, 3 years, in a small claims court, it can be in a day, decided in a day, or less than a month. So this is something that is really worth looking into. And
also, ito very common, no, yung bouncing checks, di ba? Under BP 22 yan, all right? Bata sa pambansang 22 or BP 22 law, no, bouncing checks law. Now, the thing is, if your claim is more than 100,000 pesos, obviously it doesn't fall under small claims, no? But if it's below 100,000, you can claim it there. However, if you have already a pending case of BP 22 against someone in the RTC, for example, hindi na pwede mag-prosper yung small claims court
meaning you
case
cannot
mo.
ask for the dismissal.
You can't have two
case.
cases going on at the same time. Magiging forum shopping na yun. All right. And also, a couple of notes also for mga lawyers out there who are watching. Remember, you cannot make representations in small claims court cases. At best, you can be a witness, all right, and you can be present as a next of kin, but you cannot be representing in cases like that. And also, small claims court cases can also be done by corporations, hindi lang mga individual persons, no, natural persons. All right? Okay, so over the week, we received some questions and comments from our viewers on topics we have previously discussed. From Eva, what is the standard time frame to release the back pay of an employee? It's been months since I resigned from my previous employment.
Okay. Actually, Eva, there's really no specific provision in the law which says that your employer should pay, like for instance, within a given time frame, like 3 months or 6 months. But again, if one, you can check your employment contract. If it says there that upon resignation, there's a specific time frame that your employer should pay your back pay, then you can claim based on that time frame. Or if it's really been taking several months, then you can also complain to the National Labor Relations Commission and file a claim for your back pay.
Siguro pwede mag-small claims court yan, no?
Pwede.
No?
Totoo, yeah. Wala naman
That's a money claim. Oh, if it's below 100,000, that might be something that you might want to look into, Eva. Ayan. Okay.
Our next question is from Mike. I work for a BPO company. They should be paying us based on a daily rate, but they are not. For example, if I work for 22 days in a month, I will only get paid for 20 days. If I am absent for 1 day, they will deduct my absence from my salary, but in this case, I didn't have any absences. How and where can I address this issue? I am only after what is due to me.
All right,
Tama. Well, one, in the first place, if you're absent, there's what you call the service incentive leave, which means that every employee is entitled to 5 days.
5 days.
Of leave. At the least,
Paid,
But if your company actually allows for sick leaves, then dapat walang deduction from your salary. But you said wala ka namang absences. So, in this case, if they were said to have an agreement na babayaran kayo for all the days worked, then yung days that you were not paid, then you can file a claim for your payment of salary on those days that you worked but were not paid. And the first place that you can go to for this would be the National Labor Relations Commission or NLRC. And you don't have to worry about the cost or having a complicated case because in the NLRC, basically it's an arbitration type of proceeding and you can go file a complaint even without a lawyer, and they have forms as well to help you in filing or starting your claim.
It's best also to check your employment contract. No? I mean, there's some provisions there that you may not know about, and I think it's really best to go to your HR. Your HR will be able to enlighten you on why there have been some deductions on your salary, all right? So I think that's the best thing first. Then kung wala talaga, maybe you can go to NLRC or perhaps even a small claims court case.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Let's move on. The comments we received from Millie. Your show is a blessing. I learned a lot from your episode on financial and wealth management. Wow, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Millie. That's a very good comment. And lastly, from Maria, I love your show. Aside from being very informative, I find the host very charming, elegant, and respectable. God bless your show.
All praises for you.
Comment na yun. No, it said both hosts.
Both ba? Okay,
plural. Oo.
Charming
so,
pala.
charming ka pala and elegant ka pala.
Elegant pala.
But thank you so much, Maria, for that nice comment. You really made our holidays happier.
Seem to be describing you more. So. All right, but thank you very much again. And for all those who are commenting on our social media pages, thank you very much. That's all the time that we have for tonight. Again, we would like to thank our viewers who keep on sending their legal questions via social media. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions about our topic for tonight, you may post these on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.